if you never lie, you never have to remember anything. And for me, that was so powerful. I told the truth to everyone, didn't have to remember who I told one thing to or another thing to, because I just don't lie. I actually can't keep track. Like, I do not have the mental capacity to like keep track of who I'm telling what. So I think that's helped me be who I am, because I'm not going to apologize for it, and I'm not going to pretend.
Welcome everybody to episode 34 of the Paul and Pals podcast. I'm your host, Funny Boy Paul, and Paul and Pals is a podcast where I interview my creative pals who are creating the life that they want to live. The goal of this podcast is to learn the how and why behind their creativity in order to inspire you, but really myself, on how to best create the life that you want to live. And in this episode, I have a creative conversation with my pal, Rosanna Connolly. She is the founder of Morena Communications, which is a company dedicated to delivering bespoke PR campaigns. And I'll be honest with you guys, I actually just looked up what bespoke meant about a minute ago. And it's actually another word for custom made. And in this episode, Rosanna actually takes us through the creative process behind how she basically creates the bespoke campaigns for each of the musical artists she works with. And she also takes us back in the past on what it was like to work with Ludacris and Neo when she barely knew what PR was. And she shares a secret, which isn't really a secret, on why she thinks press isn't the thing that's going to grow your listenership. Also, after and only after you've listened to the full interview, head over to the Paul and Pals newsletter to read a breakdown of something that stood out to me from this episode, in addition to another resource on how to best create the life that you want to live. And without any further ado, let's get creative. But I do want to welcome you to the show. You're actually the second person that I've interviewed from London. Second ever person from London, but you have a more like actual London accent. So I'm going to do my best during the interview to not, replicate it, because like, I feel like when I talk to somebody like that, it's so easy to, but I'll do my, wait, you're impressed, right? That's a face of impressive.
Oh, that
okay.
Was
I was about to say, I didn't know if it was.
Yeah, but just don't try to replicate it, because I don't know if I could handle it.
Okay, I'll be tame. I'll be tame. But no, I really appreciate you coming on. I always kind of start with a little background of how we met, and you're actually representing one of my really close friends, and also a very amazing artist, Tom Tide. And I remember we were talking because he's mentioned you to me because he was telling me how he's doing his marketing now. And I was kind of like, oh, like, what does she do? Like, how does she do that? And he gave me a little bit of an insight. And I was just very curious because I personally like content creators, because people that are able to just, I don't know how to express it, but like take something and then market it in a certain way. I think that's a skill that I want to have, So I wanted to kind of learn more. And really, I wanted to kind of like steal all of your tips and then implement it for my own. But, we can get into that as well. But I wanted to welcome you. And my first question is, I saw one of your recent IG posts, and I noticed it because when we were talking back and forth in that email, you wanted to send me a picture, and you had mentioned you recently cut your hair. And one thing that stood out to me about that, it was a funny reel, by the way. So if anybody's listening, definitely go watch the YouTube video of this. But one thing that stood out to me in the caption was you mentioned, before this, I didn't have the choice in cutting my hair. And this is the first time that I had the ability to do it on my own. And I would love to know the kind of reasoning for that, the insight and history behind that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's pretty deep. You've gone very deep, very like straight
That's
out
the
the
best
back.
way,
Yeah, so it's not something it's something that I'd hidden for quite many years because I felt kind of shame around it. But I've had cancer twice, and I lost my hair twice. And it's something that I really tried to put behind me, and I think just push and strive and keep going and achieve like no one else around me was achieving, and be the first at something, or be the youngest at something, or get these awards and stuff like that. And it's something that has driven me, but something that's probably also taken away some autonomy as well, or it took away a lot of autonomy in my life, which kind of threw me the other way as to like, oh, I'm going to just, do everything straight away. But one of the biggest things was, yeah, not having the control about how I looked, or, kind of any control over my body at that time. And I've recently shaved all my hair off, and I've been fortunate enough to donate it as well to a charity that gave me a wig when I needed one. So it's come full circle, and I love how I look with a shaved head. I feel like the most me with it at the moment, anyway. So yeah, it's obviously I prefer not to kind of go into the
Yeah.
ins and outs of everything that happened. It's been a big part of my life, but it's not who I am. It doesn't define me
Yeah.
at all. And me shaving my hair was a choice that I made, that I felt comfortable with because I wanted to do it, and not because of any other
Got you.
reason. So
No,
yeah,
no, I
that's
love that, and I know
why.
we kind of got too deep, but the reason that stood out to me was because uh, I could tell I had an idea of what happened, right, just based on how you phrased the caption. But I think what stood out to me was how you kind of presented it. It wasn't like the video itself was kind of funny, cheery, but kind of like when somebody presents something that it's kind of in a way you feel okay watching it, but then when you realize like, oh wow, like they were brave enough to put that out there. So I
Hmm.
really, I like that. It stood out to me, and I wanted to know,
Thank you.
you're currently in PR, right? Have you always thought about the best way to market things? Has that always kind of been a part of your character?
That's a really good question. I think I've always loved the art of storytelling. And so I guess PR is like the perfect medium for this, or, it's one of the best mediums for it, because I've always been intrigued by people's stories, where they've come from. I used to sit for hours and listen to my South African grandma talk about her like upbringing and go through photos and all that. And I would literally do the same thing every time I saw her, and listen to the stories over and over again because I couldn't get enough. And I think I've always had this curiosity, and I learned probably from a very young age what a good story looks like, and picked out different parts. And when you're repeating someone's story or saying something, that what works with crowds, and what jokes fall flat, and
Yeah.
all of that stuff. So I think it's come. I think I have probably a talent for it, which I didn't realize that not everyone does. But it's come from a curiosity, really, of listening to loads of different people, and I guess knowing my own
I
story as
see.
well.
And you prefaced your grandmother with South African. What I guess what about that kind of sticks out the most to you?
Well, my grandma was South African Indian, so she was like transplanted into this country that she was in like two cultures. So she was in the South African culture, and she used to sing the South African anthem, like, every time I saw her, like Kosikalele Africa, like that was her
Yeah.
thing. She loved South Africa. She loved, her upbringing there. But it was um also quite hard to listen to some stuff. My grandma was a seamstress, and she would tell me one of the reasons she became a seamstress was because she wasn't allowed to try on clothes that touched her skin because of the color of her skin. And so during that time, during the apartheid, she was allowed to try on shoes and coats. And then what she used to do was look in shop windows, go home, make the clothes. And she was a seamstress, and she sold clothes, made clothes for people. She made a wedding dress. And those stories were really interesting. And then, my grandma would have these gorgeous saris as well, and this whole Indian side, and the Indian jewelry, and like, the nose piercings. And she would tell me about how her mum got married at the age of 13, or her grandma. It was like, really young kind of traditions in this sense as well. And um she was one of 10 or 11, I think, children, and she spoke Tamil, but she spoke also Zulu.
Wow.
And it was like an amazing mix. And I loved her so much. She was a really important figure in my life. And she had a big influence on kind of who I am
Yeah.
today as
Yeah, I kind of
well.
got the vibe because I know you're kind of building your own brand and your own things, and it seemed like I'm guessing now you can confirm after I say this, but it seemed like your fashion brand Morena, did that come a little bit from your grandmother, or where's inspiration?
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
that's good.
Yeah, you're 100% on the
Nice.
money. So, yeah, my grandma passed away last year in
Mm,
April. Um, and it was really tough that, she's not here anymore, and it was kind of a time of loss, but also in the months like after that, it just felt like a time of honor. And I don't really know how to explain it, but like even the week after she died and I got some leave, some bereavement leave, I made a coat, and I made a coat that she would be proud of. And then I just kept having these thoughts about, I've always loved making clothes, and my grandma used to like literally inspect all of my clothing, look at the hems, look at the hand
yeah.
sewing. Yeah, she loved it. We used to talk about it for hours as well. And this Morena thing kept building in my mind, and I didn't have the name for it at the time, but I knew I wanted to make a brand that empowered women of color. 80% of garment workers are women, majority are women of
Mm,
color. And I was really, inspired by my grandma's stories of how she came to sew as well. So everything about Morena is based on my grandma's characteristics. Um, it's regal. We walk in peace. We're loving. We're
mm,
kind. We're rooted and grounded in what we believe, but we're ready to learn at the same time. And I feel so close to her when I am working on
yeah.
this, and yeah, it's something that I know she'd be really proud
And
of
that's
as well.
beautiful. And how did you actually come about the name Morena? Because when I think of Morena, I think of brown skin or brown hair. But what's that for you?
Yeah, no, that's
Oh,
exactly
nice.
it. It's it means brunette, or it means brown skin girl in some languages as well. And for me, as a person of color, as a woman of color, sometimes there's kind of factions or sections within, your women of color
Mm,
group. And morena is kind of a word that doesn't separate you from. I'm very light skinned, and I'm a mix of cultures. But then my best friend is Jamaican, and we're both morena.
mm,
And she works on me with the brand as well. Her name's Chelsea. And it's something that it was a word that united us, even though she's like my sister anyway. I feel sometimes there can be separation within the fact, these factions of women of color, and I've never really fit into one because I have no clue about any kind of Asian heritage. I have more of an idea of African heritage. My granddad was born in Guyana as
wow.
well, and came from like that Caribbean side, but um I never felt like I belonged to any groups within this women of color group. So Morena was a word that united for me. It meant a more of a unity.
And is that something? Because obviously, I assume you've been close with your grandmother and you're understanding your culture growing up. Was that how did that manifest when you were younger? When you were like you didn't feel you were maybe part of a certain group of or a faction of women? How did that kind of manifest in your childhood?
Yeah, it was interesting. Like I grew up in it was quite a white area, I guess, but then it was super diverse in other
Are you
ways.
from London
Like
originally?
I
Okay,
Yeah,
I
South
see.
London. Yeah, so grew up in Morden until the age of 6, and Morden is like the end of the Northern Line. So it's
Oh,
like
okay.
south. It's very south.
Okay, got you.
Um, and there's honestly, it's so diverse in Morden. But I'd say the people that I was surrounded more were white people. I'm half white. My dad's white, Irish, Liverpudlian. Um, and I think when we moved to Wallington, which is just next to Croydon, again, the deep south.
Okay.
But it's Greater London, but it's still South London. Um, it was really interesting because I think Wallington was quite white at the time, but Croydon was very diverse in terms of like the Asian and the Black community. And so again, I had like, a good mix or more of exposure to it. But I think I I can probably count on one hand the number of mixed people that I met at growing up. And that was a big difference. I think um, not being able to relate, apart from my brothers, not being able to relate to many other mixed people. But now, there's so many
Yeah.
more around, and a lot more mixing going on. But at the time, it was odd to have like two parents that were a different color. And I wanted to be blonde and called Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Yeah, I wanted to be
Yeah.
Rebecca, like
That's
Becky.
funny. I relate to that a little bit because I'm from Nigeria, so I came to the States, and ever since I was kind of growing up in school, I was always in majority black areas, like black schools, had a lot of black friends. And it wasn't
Hmm.
till, and so that was the norm for me, right? And it wasn't till I moved high school's 10th grade that it was my first time being in like places that weren't majority black. And I didn't think about the
Mm,
effect that had on me growing up because when I went to college, it was a majority white college, right? But I think my experience
right.
growing up in that majority black till probably was 10th grade, maybe 15, 16, I don't know. And then going to a place that's very
Okay.
different. Had a lot of Middle Eastern friends. I got to learn a lot about, them and their culture. I felt like it kind of prepared me
Yeah.
for when I got to college because I wasn't you didn't feel weird in being in different spaces, right? And I think that's something that I'm
Hmm.
like, oh wow, like I wonder what my life would have been like if I only grew up in one majority place and you didn't really get to understand. But I feel like it helps you because now I can
It's
talk to this
true.
person, I don't feel uncomfortable. It's still kind of weird being in the minority all the time, but you don't feel too uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, do you think that has an impact on how you, I guess, market? Because when I think of marketing, you're just taking an idea and making it so that the average person can consume that. Do you ever think about how you have that
Hmm.
ability?
Yeah, I've always called myself like, well, not always, but I kind of when I thought about it for
Yeah.
many years, I guess, I've called myself a culture chameleon
Mm.
because I've always, for as long as I can remember, had the ability to fit in. And I say that in inverted quotes because I've never really felt like I've
Yeah.
belonged. But I've always been able to fit in with different types of people, different cultures, different, everything. I've always been able to get on with people and along with people. And I think my mixed heritage, my mix of cultures has completely contributed to that. Um, Getting on with different personalities as well. I lived in a household that was very opinionated, maybe, or, and you like, I guess, standing your ground, but also being respectful and kind of listening to other people. And I think that's really helped actually, and that relatability factor, I think I'm a real empath as
Mm.
well. So like if you start crying, I will cry.
I'll
Like,
test that
that's
soon.
just how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think just relating to people on that level has probably helped me a lot. And I, I guess obviously PR is my job, but I don't think any job should be transactional, or I feel like it has turned transactional in many ways, but I feel like our first job as like nice people or just humans is to have like a human to human connection. Are you okay? And genuinely want to know if someone's okay, genuinely want to know about someone's life. And I think that interest in the stories has probably helped as well, helped with the PR side because it means that you build good relationships with people that want to open your emails should you have something for them to share, or anything that you are working on. And I think a lack of connection is really
Mm.
sad.
That's true. And I definitely think you are one of those people that initially just, I guess you were initially who you are when you first come in contact. And what I mean by that is I remember when, Tom Todd had made that first group chat with us. it felt okay to just be like sending emojis and smiley faces and hearts because that's how you
Oh
were. And
yeah.
I'm a big emoji person. You know, if I'm texting somebody and they don't see that I have
Right.
emojis, they might be like, "What's wrong? Like, are you okay?" And I noticed when you send that
Okay.
initially, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, she's cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just knew that I could regularly, I didn't have to, because you know how you feel weird when you're texting emoji, but then that person isn't? You're like, damn, like, should I chill? Like, do
Yeah.
I gotta chill? Like, let me reduce the amount of exclamation marks. And now you're both just talking dry. But no, I definitely, I definitely, I would agree that
That's
you are an
so
empath.
funny.
But you mentioned something. You said you feel like PR is now, or maybe your job is kind of being more transactional now. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think the pandemic hasn't helped. You used to be able to see people at gigs or, go for breakfast or lunches and just chat and just have some like personal connection and, talk about obviously work, but you would talk about life and, what's going on in general. And honestly, some of my closest friends are journalists. And it's really weird to say that, but it's people that you meet through work, and these are people that I work with, and I need them to, help me do my job. But at the same time, I have a really big appreciation for them. I really care about them. They are my friends. I will check in with them because I guess it's part and parcel of the journey. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I
No,
don't
I think
know.
I kind of get what you're getting at. And I relate to that too because I remember when I was first getting into the podcasting, right? One thing about an interview format show is you are completely dependent on the guest, right? And for me,
Mm,
I remember when I was first starting, I already had kind of a list of people I wanted to interview, and then I had aspirations for certain people. And I remember initially just like reaching out, like, yo, please, like, come on this show, like, do this. Like, when are you free doing
hmm
that?
hmm
And I remember when somebody kind of, they didn't really want to be on the show and they kind of like let that be known in a way. And to me,
hmm
initially, I was kind of like, man, like, why not? Like, this could be dope. Like, I can do, I'm good at this. I can do this, right? And
You are
uh,
good at this.
stop. See, I said that, so I wanted to see if you would agree and like kind of repeat it, but you
No,
gotta,
I know, I do agree. I was like, the research,
yeah.
wow. The questions. I'm
Yeah,
like,
I'm getting better. It makes it
okay,
fun. But I guess what I'm getting
okay.
at is I initially took it as like, damn, like they don't want to be on the show. Like, why? And I think I was looking at it purely transactional. I was kind of like, oh, this person has a cool story, or they have this many followers, or this much engagement.
hmm
I know if
hmm
I do that, then there's a chance that, you know what I'm saying? But I had to
Yeah.
step back and be like, man, I have to genuinely want to talk to you. And I have to see if you're interested because even if I am genuinely interested in you, but you're like, no, I don't want to, or I'm kind of busy, I have to respect that and not be willing to because
hmm
then that way I'm not forcing it. I never want to force an interview because it's not going to go smooth. It's not, you can hear when something's fake. You know what I'm saying?
You can tell when it's
Very
not
so.
authentic, a
Yeah,
hundred
and I will
percent.
say that I think the pandemic has kind of contributed to that because when I meet people in person, like it's purely just to talk, right? But sometimes when you send an email or a DM, hey,
You gotta
yeah,
get to the point.
you know what I'm saying? Hey, how's your day? So no, I definitely agree, and I know we're in different lines of work or whatever, but when I want to ask you prior to this PR because PR is not you, that's just something you do. I'm curious to
Mhm.
know what other jobs or career paths did you maybe initially pursue or wanted to do? Oh, we got a story coming.
I've done PR for like almost
10
10 years.
years?
It was my first
Wait,
job.
how old are you? 10 years?
I'm 28.
28. Wow. So like right out of
Yeah.
high school then, right?
Yeah, out of college. So I went to I studied at a really cool school, which is the Brit
Brit school.
School. And it's quite well known in the UK as like, the school that Adele went to
Oh,
and Amy Winehouse and stuff like that. It's a music school, or it's a school for the
I see.
arts, basically. And I studied music there, but they do theatre, they do media, they do art. There's like different strands, but I studied pure music there, which involved like performing, production, history of music, like kind of everything. It was the equivalent of three A levels in music, and I don't know what that is in terms of the American
Okay.
equivalent, but it was pure music. And then my dream was to be a singer from a young age, but I had gotten sick at the age of 16, and that dream changed a little bit based on what I felt my capabilities were, and I guess some fears that I had, and a lack of confidence. So then I wanted to be a songwriter, and I still write songs, I still play, I write poems. But I really needed money. I needed a job.
Yeah.
So I got this, I applied and I got an internship at Mercury Records, which was a huge deal to get this as my first job, at the age of 19. And I worked on like Watch the Throne. I assisted on, I wasn't running them, but
What?
like Watch the Throne, like Rihanna, Justin Bieber, like Frank Ocean's Channel
Yeah.
Orange, like all of this stuff. I was able to be like, a part of this journey, and it was so cool. And the first artist that I did PR for was Ludacris, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is insane. Like
What?
I love Ludacris. Like, yeah, it was just mad. And I met him, and I met Neo, and I was like, oh my gosh, Neo's the best songwriter in the world.
Yeah.
At the time, this was
No, funny
2012.
story. I didn't want to.
I
I
was
don't want
so
to. I
hyped.
literally just met Neo like a couple weeks ago,
Oh
randomly.
no,
Like he randomly. I went to this like Labor Day
no
club
way.
lounge, and he was there. And I remember telling our waitress at our table, I was like, "Yo, could you go tell him that like people think I look like him?" And she went over there, and he turns around, and we just acknowledge each other and like bow. And I'm like, "Wow, that was a very like." I feel like my life was leading up to this moment, but I didn't. You can continue the story. Sorry, that just triggered me.
No, he was a cool guy. Like he was great. I did promo, like I was on promo days with him, and I got to assist on his projects, and I went to the studio with him. It was so
Wow.
cool. And I was like 19. I was like, this is the best thing
Yeah.
ever. And I stuck at it. Just
No, that's
stayed.
amazing. I feel like you rarely hear stories of people
Yeah.
getting into what they want to do like right when they want to do it, right? So that's
Oh, well, I had no idea what PR was. I just
okay.
needed money. Let me be clear. I did not care what job I was
Okay.
doing. I wanted to
I was
make
trying to
money.
beautify the story.
So then I
Yeah.
liked it.
So when they initially put you in that role, though, what and you didn't have any experience, what I guess what were you doing and how did you know how to like do it? Did you just have to learn on the job?
I had some great people that were very kind to me, very patient with me, and I've always been very conscientious, a very hard worker. And I think they saw this straight away because I remember my manager at the time saying, "You're the best intern we've ever had." And it was like 2 weeks in, and I was like, okay.
Okay.
Okay. But yeah, like her name was Lauren, and she has her own PR company called Hailstorm PR. And she does Fallout Boy and like, huge bands actually still. Um, and another guy called Ash Collins, and he did all of like the cool Def Jam stuff and Watch the Throne and Frank Ocean and everyone like that. And he took me under his wing like pretty much immediately as well. And then my friend, like my dear friend, Kat Marker, and we're still like we were still messaging today. We have pet names for each other, which I won't embarrass myself with.
Now you gotta say it. You gotta say
But
it.
we had hot
That's
stepper.
you?
No, this
Oh,
is
okay.
Kat. She's the
Okay.
hot stepper. We're both shushes. We call each other shushes, and I'm
Sweet.
sweet cheeks.
Okay. All right.
These are the names over the. I've known her
Got
10
you.
years, so we've had. She was the one that I feel has honestly changed my life in so many ways. Like, not only was she a great friend, but she was a great teacher as well. And I learned so much from her. And, she doesn't even remember this. I brought this up the other day, but like whenever I'd be writing press releases, she would literally like go through it and put in red stuff that's wrong, stuff that needs changing, like
Yeah.
red. And then I'd sit next to her and we'd go through it together. And I learned so much from that process, and she took the time to do that. She is so kind, yeah, so generous, and she taught me, because of my energy levels at the time, I couldn't be out every night. At that point, I just like I I relapsed at the age of 20. And so when I came back to work, I couldn't go out every night. I wasn't even allowed to get the tube after being unwell, and having a transplant. And it takes a long time to get over it. But she taught me you didn't have to do what everyone else was doing to still be successful. I didn't have to be out every night and partying and meeting people or drinking or whatever it was. I could be myself and still be successful, and like carve a new path. And I think that's one of the most important life lessons that I have learned, and that's from her.
Wow, that's really
So
good. No,
yeah.
I love that. I can just see the love that you have for her, and how she's impacted your life. And I just love to see that. So I really hope she tunes in, and listens. And
Oh yeah, she will. She'll be like the first to listen and cry.
oh,
No, she won't cry. She might cry.
hot stepper. All right. But
The hot stepper.
I really love the advice she gave you, and this is something I usually ask maybe towards the end, but I think it's kind of fitting now, and we can get into more of why. You've already kind of mentioned a big emotional, maybe traumatic thing you went through in life, right? And one thing that stood out to me was your friend's advice of like, you being who you are and still be able to accomplish things other people do is probably the key, maybe the key state of mind I feel everybody's trying to achieve. Being who you are, but still being able to live the life you want to live. So I'd like to, based on your current life experiences so far, what is a word of advice you would give to somebody that wants to know, how do I create the life that I want to live?
There's a quote that I read when I was probably in my early teens that I have pretty much lived by since coming across it. And I don't know who it's attributed to. I think I just saw it on like some social media. Probably on
Yeah, I was
Tumblr
about
or
to say
something, one of
Tumblr.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's, if you never lie, you never have to remember anything. And for me, that was so powerful. I was in an all-girls school at the time, and there would just be little lies going around or gossip or whatever, and you might say something to one person and then another thing to the other. And I just stopped that. I didn't involve myself anymore. I told the truth to everyone. Didn't have to remember who I told one thing to or another thing to, because I just don't lie. I actually can't keep track. Like, I do not have the mental capacity to like keep track of who I'm telling what.
Hmm.
So I think that's helped me, you know, be who I am, because I'm not going to apologize for it. Like and I'm not going to pretend. And I learned that kind of lesson quite early on in life, but I think it will work at any time. Like, you can literally just be
Hmm.
yourself and not lie. Like, if you don't like a type of food, you don't have to say, "Oh, I like this food." You can be like, "Oh, thank you
Yeah.
so much. I will try it," or something like that. You don't have to like be a dick and be like, "No, I don't
Yeah.
want this." But yeah, you can just be a lot less stressed, I
Yeah.
think, stress
Wow.
free.
I feel like this is almost meant to be, because that's actually something that obviously I've heard that quote before. I'm familiar with it, but I think it was this past weekend or maybe the past couple of weeks that like that quote itself is reflective of something I recently went through. Right. I think
Mm,
I went to a recent therapy session. I've always wanted to try therapy, so I'm like, I finally have
hmm
the incentive. It just somebody kind of gave me some tips on how to approach it, and we were talking,
hmm
and one thing that he had mentioned was talking about like, relationships, and it can be boyfriend,
hmm
girlfriend, husband, wife. But one thing that he said about him and his wife, and he's been through a lot of shit too. And he was like, no one knows me better than my wife. And I learned that because when I was I guess when he was younger, he was saying that, you kind of want to be this person for somebody, right? But you also have the person that you are. And over time, if you want to be with
Yeah.
that person, you're going to eventually, it's going to grow apart, who you want to be and who you are. So he was like,
Yeah.
when you remove that shame, when you're able to really be that person, that not who they think they are, but who you actually are, it actually helps you better, because you're going to eventually reach a point where what they've thought of you and then what you aren't kind of conflict, and now you're like, oh shit,
Mhm. Mhm.
So no, that quote really resonates because I think it's something that I learned recently that I'm like, wow, like that's true, because sometimes I think, and I think it's interesting that you were able to kind of come to terms with that because you mentioned that you were the cultural chameleon, right? And I think sometimes that makes you want to please everybody. That makes you want everybody to be happy.
Oh, a
So you
hundred
might do a
percent.
little lie here and there because you want everybody to be okay and smiling. So I think it's interesting. You kind of turn
I wanted everyone to like
exactly,
me. Of
exactly. I
course.
think we all do. No, I love that. And I don't remember if you mentioned, was it Lauren that had her own PR company as well?
Yeah, she started her own PR company in, oh my gosh, it's a few years ago. I can't even remember now, maybe 2013.
Oh snap!
Um, but yeah, she's been quite
Wow,
successful
she's
with
been
it.
hot stepping for a minute, and I wanted to I
Yeah.
wanted to ask because I know that you have your own, right? You have Morena Communications, but is that something that you kind of recently got into? You've been doing that for a while and launched your own thing.
Yeah. No, it's pretty recent. I started it, to be honest, I officially started it at the top of 2021, so in January this year. Um, it's been interesting.
Mm,
I never thought I would have my own PR company because it's never something that I'd fully desired. But I'm really enjoying it. Like, I have loved being able to work with independent artists, especially like Lee, like
yeah.
Tom Tide, and be able to offer a service that I'm proud of as well. Um, and like put my best efforts in and know that I've done my best job and not feel like, I mean, I'm a perfectionist. So I'm like, you could have always done
Yeah.
better. But I feel like I've been able to perhaps do things for people that have impacted them positively as well and their careers
Mm.
positively. So um that's been really good. I've learned a lot about finance.
Taxes. Yeah.
Tax and all
Yeah.
of that.
And how did you
Um,
actually launch it though? Because I'm curious. I know you were working in PR maybe for another company, but is there like
yeah,
a, oh, I have to quit this job to do my own thing, or are you able to kind of like still have them kind of separated, or what's the maybe conflict of interest with that?
yeah. So I was working with Apple for 2 years, um, and I was doing the PR for Apple Music at the time in the UK and Europe, and I was there as a contractor role. I was covering someone who was on maternity leave, so I wasn't permanent. But with that role, I did have a non-compete because of the nature of the work and obviously the music
Yeah.
and that kind of crossover. And then when I finished that role, I contracted with another company, and this type of contract was part-time. And because of the type of contract, I had to have a second income as well. So it meant that I didn't have a non-compete and that I could
Yeah.
do it. And I was like,
Hey.
I'm gonna do it. I really want to do it.
I'm
So
gonna do it.
I did.
I
Yeah,
did
I
it. No, I love
did.
that. And I want to put myself in artist perspective. Although I will say, I don't know if you're thinking about this in the future, but I have noticed being in the podcasting space that PR for podcasting is a niche space that you will thrive in.
It
So
is.
just think of that in the future and
Thanks.
contacting.
We actually have done PR for podcasts, and I did it at Apple
Oh,
as well. I did
okay.
the podcast
Yeah,
PR in the
great. We
UK.
will we'll talk after this episode.
Yeah.
So so I'm gonna pretend to be an artist, and what I want to know, I want to go through this process with you. I love to know that. I always love knowing the creative processes for all of my guests. If I'm an artist,
Yeah.
first of all, how do I even contact you? How do we start working together? What is that like?
Yeah, I have like an email that people can contact us on. So it's hello@morena.uk, and that's on our Morena Instagram account. And it helps me set boundaries so that people aren't coming into my inbox as well. And I can visit I check it every day, and I can visit that inbox, but not have the stress of like, replying immediately or anything like that. So that helps me have a boundary for like people emailing. Sometimes you get spam, sometimes you get like someone that I do not want to reply to, and that's really helpful that it's a different
Yeah.
email. But that is checked all the time. And then I tend to, I need to hear the music first. And I will only work on stuff that I believe in. That's so important because it's my company. I can do
Yeah.
that. And before, when you work for other companies, you can't say what you're going to work on and what you're not going to work on. You work on your projects and that's it. And with Morena, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to only work on stuff that I liked and stuff that I saw had potential. So I always listen to the music, and then from there I would do a call just to kind of understand the story. Story's so important. You can't have a release without any background these days. It's just not gonna fly. Like it might be a great song, but you need something else that will cut through because there's so many great songs. So you need to have that personality. You need to know what you stand for, and that's really important. Another important question for me is heritage, you know, for many reasons, but I feel like like you get to know so much about a person from their heritage, their cultural heritage and upbringing. And I don't think this question is asked enough. And it's one of the most important questions for me. And then if I want to take on a project, we'll have another chat. And then if I take it on, I'll then do like, multiple calls, like understand what the artist wants more and more, and a PR questionnaire that I've developed as well if it needs it. Not everyone needs it because it's quite clear, but some people need a bit more drawing out of themselves. So then I have this tool as well to get that as well. So that's the process, I
No,
guess.
I get it now. So no,
It sounds
yeah,
long, but you have to be dedicated to your own PR as much as I'm going to be
exactly.
dedicated to it.
Yeah,
So,
and that's the thing too, because I was
yeah.
gonna. Well, I guess I have two questions too. From that is, one you mentioned the kind of if you're a PR for somebody else's firm or agency, you might get a project that you have to work on, but you might not be fucking with the music. So does that actually happen? Have you? Has that
No.
happened?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
crazy.
So many
That's
times.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And that brings me to my next question: is like, what do you think about? So I think about it from like this: like, so in this current economy, the creator economy, everybody that's creating, there's so much opportunity, but there's also more competition, right? So everybody's
Hmm.
fiending for a way to go to the top. And I feel like,
Hmm.
obviously you really care about your art, but I feel like there could be other companies or agencies that might take advantage of somebody's want to be great. And I'm curious, how
Oh
would
my
somebody that's
gosh.
getting into this PR space, how do you navigate that and make sure you're not working with anybody that just wants to take your money and just submit it to random, campaigns or something?
Yeah. It's really awful that this happens, and there's so many stories that I've heard of this happening. And even when I was working full time in companies that I wasn't allowed to do PR on the outside, I would still consult with people that needed the help and that had been like kind of swindled, I guess, because it just makes me so sad that like, being an artist is not easy. You're working and making the money so that you can release music, and you're trusting other people to help you on the journey, and it makes me so angry. um it's not fair. It's not fair, but I think some good questions to ask are, specific titles that people are pitching to. I would ask for a full PR plan as well. Um, you should be getting regular press updates when you're in cycle. Like I send weekly press updates when we have tracks and artists in cycle. Um, you should be expecting like regular communication from your publicist on updates when you're in cycle. So when I say in cycle, it means that you are in kind of release mode. There's stuff happening. If you're out of cycle, it's not going to be as full on because there's not much happening. You're not releasing music, but opportunities might still come. You might have an event invite or something like
Yeah.
that, but it wouldn't be full on like, oh, we need to be hitting the blogs or whatever. Um, I think these are really good tips, I guess. And yeah, ask for like specific
Got
targets
you.
as well, and express your wishes and your specific targets so that they have something to go off, so that you need to say what success looks like to you realistically. But if you really want to be in a certain publication, you can say, this is my goal. And then as a publicist, as long as it's a reasonable goal, like, if Tom Tide wanted to be the cover of Vogue, I'd have to say that,
Hey, let's
let's have
talk,
a
Lee.
chat because that's not
Yeah.
realistic, not even in 10 years'
Yeah.
time. So, but if another female artist wanted to be the cover of Vogue and it was, within their aesthetic and different
Mm-hmm.
things that works and the story, etc., etc., and you can see it happening, that's realistic, in a number of years. But, you know, I think some of Lee's goals were, to be featured on ID and Clash and stuff like that. And, ID have playlisted
Yeah.
him multiple times. Clash have posted about him. And these are things that, I was going to do anyway, but it's great to know that that's what success looks like for
Mm,
him so that I can make sure or do my very best to get him what success looks like in his eyes
got
as
you.
well.
And I'm kind of curious too because I'm thinking about artists that maybe want to come to publicists, right? But let's think about the artists that are kind of just doing that. They've been doing their thing for a while on their own, and they might not be either ready or wanting to pay for a publicist. Where do you think a lot of the influencer, I guess, what do you think is driving growth for most musical artists now? Is it the TikToks? Is it blogs? Is it Instagram? Where do you think is the best place or best place to try to be?
Playlist.
Playlists, just strictly playlists. Yeah,
Yeah, it's definitely not press and it's definitely not things in isolation. Like PR will never be something that you will see a spike in streams because PR is something, press is something that people visit and understand your story and get to know you. But this can be at so many different times. Whereas radio or TV, someone Shazams you whilst that's happening, you see the spike because that's at a moment in time. Press is like a culmination and brings all of these things
yeah,
together. So it will never be something that completely moves the
I
needle.
see.
And I think sometimes people expect it. Oh, well, we were on NME. We should have 10,000 streams. It doesn't work
Yeah,
like that. Um, I would say what moves the needle is playlisting, getting on those Spotify playlists, the top Apple Music playlists. Those are the ones that are gonna grow your listenership,
I see.
basically.
And is there a way to like? Is there like a certain ways to do that? I know there's ways to submit, but like, obviously there's a ton of people submitting. So how would somebody wanna, if they want to stand out or get on a specific playlist that's so niche? Like, how does that kind of work?
It's difficult. You have to go through the process. Um, if you're signed to a label, you have someone pitching on your behalf. Like, signed to a major. If you, I pitch to streaming services as a publicist. It's not my job, but I do it because I see the
Yeah,
value in it. I've worked at Apple. I know
yeah,
them. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, it's difficult. It's really difficult. But I found the best way as a publicist is I pitch to the playlist from the publications. And so many publications will have playlists on Spotify and Apple Music. And it's great just to get your track featured in them. So, some of the UK playlists are like Mixmag, Unilad, NME, ID, The Independent, like all of these things. The line of best fit is really hot, and getting in these playlists is great because these are all about music as well. These are people writing
Hmm.
about music, and I think that really helps. You can't really control if Spotify is going to open your track or if Apple Music is going to open your track. We all have to go through the same pitching
Yeah,
process. So you can also pitch to the playlist owners that aren't the DSPs. And I think maybe people aren't recognizing that as much.
is the pub? I feel like I guess it depends on the playlist, but I know there's some people that like there's like private people that have their own playlists and they're kind of big. I know Lee's told me
Yeah.
about Shrek. I've seen him on Twitter and he has like a whole
hmm
thing.
hmm
But I've always wondered if like the ones that are run by a Spotify or Apple or Tidal are those people that are actually curating it. Is that public information? Because I feel like that would be annoying to for people to know that you're that person, right?
Yeah, I mean, we need to protect like obviously their DMs
Yeah.
and their boundaries because yeah, if someone's identity, it's public information for sure. Like there
Okay.
are playlist curators like out there. Some aren't public, but it's not like they're not hidden away in a closet somewhere and
You
they
gotta
have to like wear a
hack into
disguise.
Spotify's web servers.
Um,
Who is it? Who runs
yeah,
it?
who is
Yeah.
it?
Okay.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, I would really respect their boundaries, and if you message them directly, it's probably going to be more annoying than it is helpful to you. More annoying for them than it is helpful for you because there is a process, and even if they did reply to you, they'd say use the
I see.
process. It's not going to be, oh my gosh, yes, you DM'd me out of nowhere. I'm definitely going to feature
I
your
love this
song.
song. I see. And
Yeah.
speaking about respecting boundaries, are you the only one working on your communication company right now? Is it just you?
No, I have an amazing colleague called Emily who works with me as
Okay.
well. And yeah, she joined me actually in January as well. So she's been working with me for 10 months. And she's come into PR quite fresh. So it's nice to be able to share my skills and do, and give what I've received as well, in terms of learning about PR. Yeah, she like honestly, she's so great. So we get on really, really well, which is super
I
important
see.
to me,
Yeah.
as well as, obviously the work is
Hmm.
important, but I think getting on with your colleagues is
I
really
agree. And
important.
I asked that because I wanted to know, like, do you ever sometimes just get tired of listening to music or being pitched or having to pitch? Is that something that you deal with? And how do you, if that is something, how do you actually deal with that?
Never get tired of listening to music. Never have gotten tired of listening to music. Well, I guess when I was poorly, like I didn't have the energy,
Hmm.
but I love discovering new music. I love it. It's my favorite thing. I love sharing new music. Like I'm appreciator of good music, and I mean all music as well. I'm one of those people that can just appreciate good music. Um, and I think that's good.
Yeah, it's your job. Yeah.
I also know when music is not good
Hmm.
immediately, and I know when it can't even be improved. Like I guess I just I have a bit of an A&R head on
Yeah.
me. Not that I would ever want to do A&R, but sometimes you can hear potential in a track and you can say, okay, well, if you do this, if you speed it up or, to change some elements, like this could work. Sometimes there is no hope from you. There's just no hope. And it's terrible.
At least you're real though. It's better to let them know now than to like.
No, I can't listen to this. I
No, I love
can't.
that. But no, it's good that you love it though. Because I was gonna ask if like there's a way of like, or if you kind of spend. Because I'm assuming you have an actual life outside of what you're doing. But it seems like music is kind of your passion overall. So that's good to
Yeah.
have. And do you have any other hobbies or things that you like outside of the music and seamstress?
Well, yeah, the fashion and sewing is like a big thing for me. I love, I guess it's still music, but like playing and singing and writing poems. Netflix is a huge part of my
What are you
life.
watching now?
I just
God
finished Squid
damn it. I
Game.
still haven't started it. I'm so mad
Oh my
because
gosh.
it's one of those shows where like you have to watch it because somebody's gonna ruin it for you. And I've been dodging
You
spoilers
need to
left
watch
and
it.
right. Okay, so yeah, I'll probably try it tonight. Okay, so
Please
it was worth
do
the hype, you
it.
think?
Do it. Oh, I watched it. I think yeah, I could not get enough. Like I think my brother, I told him about it. He watched it in a day. It was that good. Like he wasn't working
Okay.
that day, so he just watched
I love
it
the
in a
prefacing.
day.
Yeah, he does have a job.
He
Okay, he
has a
does a
job.
job. Cool. No, I'll check it out. That's good too. And what was it? Yeah. So you mentioned we didn't really get too much into the seamstress stuff, but I was gonna ask. You're running two companies now, basically, right? You're learning a lot about finances, taxes, and everything. I'm
Yeah.
curious now that they're officially income based. What are your goals for them? Like, what do you want them to be now that they're not just your hobbies?
Well, yeah, it's true. It's true because you don't need to monetize every hobby. Let me just put it out there. But I had a first iteration of a clothing company when I was 19, and I used to sell clothes on Etsy and hair accessories and stuff. And this is always something I've wanted to do as well. Unfortunately, it's not as far gone as it's not as far down the line as it's making me income.
Yeah.
I still, I'm working on the website and everything, and it's, the socials, everything are on pause at the moment because it is overwhelming doing so much. I was also just consulting for a company that, 20 hours a week
Mm,
that I'm leaving tomorrow, and it's difficult because time isn't like a commodity that you can kind of escape. Like we all need sleep.
yeah,
We all
that's so
need
true.
we all need necessities. So I think the goal, you know, obviously they're businesses, but the goal has never been to be like multi-million or, to make so much money that I'm drowning in it. The goal is literally to have a good life, to to kind of act on good morals and good values, to be as inclusive as possible and to make a positive impact. So I can't say, obviously we have to make money.
Yeah,
Otherwise it
kind of have
wouldn't
to.
be a
Yeah,
business and otherwise I couldn't do
yeah,
those things. But that's not the ultimate goal. I'm not looking for like 50% growth year on year or whatever, whatever that business jargon is. And I really hope, this is recorded. I really hope it doesn't
yeah,
change. That doesn't change because I don't want that to change. I don't want business to ever take over my life. My identity has never been ever been in my
yeah,
jobs, and I never want it to be. My identity is in me, or it's in Christ. Like it's not in these
yeah.
kind of labels at
Exactly.
all.
Yeah, that's life.
So
You need
yeah,
income, but you don't want it to define you. You don't want to be defined by dollar signs. So I definitely relate to that,
no.
and I love all you've shared with us. I think I like when somebody can be open. Obviously, I know I'm not making you reveal everything about yourself, but I think what you've shared is enough to get a hint of who you are, and you've kind of already kind of documented your struggles and other things you've overcome. I want to know, is there one thing that you are willing to share that you're still kind of struggling with right now, and like how are you trying to navigate it?
I think we all struggle with so
Yeah.
many things. That's a very privileged thing to say, from coming from a first world country as well. So, I don't want to diminish anything that I'm experiencing or anyone else is experiencing, but we're also in a very privileged position at the same time. Um, I'd say I still struggle with uh like I guess energy at times, or like, kind of anxieties about getting sick. So, for me, like whenever I have a drink of alcohol, I have to be okay with my decision to drink that because alcohol is like an immunosuppressant. So it means that you can become more susceptible to picking up stuff. And I have to like, some people, most people won't think about
No,
all of this stuff when having a
not the
drink.
average person. No.
Um, and yeah, in my mind, I am thinking, okay, if I have this drink, what does that mean for the rest of the week? What does that mean? Does that mean that I might not be able to do something? Does that mean I could get sick? Or how am I feeling right now? Do I feel well enough to have this drink? Um, and these are just thought processes that kind of happen. For me, it's the same with going to the gym. Like if I overexhaust my body, it's not good. So like something that someone's like, oh yeah, I can push myself, I can get in a gym session. I have to be really careful, that thin line of like what is pushing myself to a healthy point and it's like a challenge, and what's pushing me over the edge that's going to make me unwell. And I've definitely gone over the edge a lot of times. And so I guess you could call it a struggle with kind of, those elements of
Yeah.
life. But it's not, it's not comparable to what other people go through. But then again, I'm not going to
Yeah, no,
diminish it.
exactly. It's you. It's
Yeah,
personalized, and I ask because I think
yeah.
sometimes when because obviously the people that I interview, they accomplish something or something that you want to hear about, you want to know how they did it. But I think sometimes when we see people in these elevated platforms, or we see them always, we see them how we see them, right? However they pursue themselves, I think
Hmm.
we sometimes forget that they are also struggling with things. And I want to just always
Hmm.
remind people that, hey, like, she's been able to figure this out and cultivate her life this way. But you ever think about like what it is on a day where she's tired, or she goes to the gym and now she's like, damn, I don't want to do this much miles because I don't know how I'm going to feel after that. And I think about it
Hmm.
too because I think I used to want to always represent myself in the best light. And I think when you are struggling, it's sometimes
Hmm.
good to be able to tell, maybe not the whole world on a podcast, but your dear
Yeah.
friends that might just never know that you do
Yeah.
that, because it just helps to minimize this. I think we tend to idolize a lot of things and we don't really know what's the full 100% part of it. So I really appreciate you sharing that, because I
Yeah.
know, like I said, it is a personal thing, but it's good for everybody to kind of hear that sometimes, you know?
Oh, no, definitely. I think somehow I've gotten so many labels over the years because of what I've been through as well. It's, oh, you're so brave, you're such an inspiration, you're all of these things. I'm like, stop putting these labels on me. I'm just normal
Yes,
human.
yes.
Like, I don't need like it's almost like a pressure sometimes when people say this to you and you're being viewed, you feel like you're being viewed in a certain way that's kind of like, this lovely, perfect, brave, whatever person. And it's not always like that. And I really like that you're kind of, I guess, taking that away, removing like the veil of
Yeah,
that, really, because we are all human. We do struggle with things. We do have up days and down
exactly.
days, and not everything is shared on social media. I haven't actually shared anything on social media for a while, and that's been quite conscious because I I don't
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah, it's okay to say
And so
that.
I'm not
Yeah.
being pressured into it.
It's okay
Yeah,
to say
I'm just
that.
not gonna do
Yeah. I think
it.
not posting on
But
social media and not drinking are two of those things where it's like people want to ask why. And it's like we have to
yeah,
normalize it. I just don't want to, you know? So,
I don't
no,
want
that's
to.
that's
That's
great.
it.
And before I let you go, I do want you to do one thing for me. I would love to know who is a creative pal of yours that you, I guess you might have already hinted at it, but that you really, are very interested in or would love to hear more about. Who is somebody for you that you just really amazed by their creativity?
There's so many
Yeah,
people.
hey, some of your friends are listening. You got to choose carefully.
Oh my gosh, no, I can't. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, there's so many people genuinely that I am just so fascinated by. Um, that's such a
I'll
hard
give you three.
question.
You can say three. Is that fair?
Okay. Okay. So there is someone, oh yeah, okay. I have to shout out this person because they just inspire me all the time. They're a photographer, creative director. They worked on me with Morena as well. And honestly, every conversation I learned so much. And her name's Almas
Almost
Badat,
for that.
and she is just insane. She's just, yeah, she's really, really cool. Um, she also has her own podcast, actually, if you
Okay,
want to
all
hear
right.
her. Yeah.
Okay.
Hers is actually a South Asian podcast. I don't know if you fit the
Oh,
bill.
damn. I'll just bring her on mine instead.
Yeah. It's called What Is This Behavior? And I love that. And she came up with
I
the
see.
name. And I don't know if you've seen that viral video, like of the Indian Big Brother, where the woman is like, you want it, you're asking for
I don't
it,
think I've
that
seen
one.
that.
And it's like, what is this behavior?
Okay,
Oh
you gotta
my gosh.
send that. You
It's
gotta
like,
send that.
I'll send you the
Okay.
link. It's like it definitely went viral like in the UK and I think other places, but it's kind of named after that moment. And it's, yeah, she's just so smart and savvy in all of that stuff. So yeah, I'd love to hear her speak. Um Yeah, do you know what? That's going to
Okay,
be my
that's
one
good.
because I can't. I literally can't choose.
I
I
love that.
can't
No,
choose.
that's what I try to keep that restriction because I think there's always a ton of people that
Yeah,
inspire us.
I'll say yeah. I'll keep
Yeah, and I know
going.
you've probably inspired a ton of people just, in the short hour I've had you. And, just for us to
Oh, I
support
hope
you and
so.
to, keep you going, what would you like somebody to do? Maybe follow you, email you. What are ways that we can support and reach out to you?
Yeah, definitely. So, I'm my social handle is Rosanna Red. And the PR company is called Morena.coms. So yeah, it'd be great if people could follow and support on there. Feel free to email the email. I do check it. Um, yeah, just comments, messages are always lovely, actually. And yeah, if anyone I've also developed some tools for artists as well that want to take care of their own PR. And yeah, I really want to help people that have been swindled as well. I think it makes me so, when you brought up the question, it still makes me
Yeah.
angry. Like it's, I can't. So yeah, if anyone's been in that situation, I'm here to help as well. Genuinely, like I will do a call with you and send you some kind of
Got you.
resources as
Yeah, I
well.
love that. No, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on and being a pal. And to anybody else listening, always remember to stay creative. Peace. Thank you guys for tuning in to that creative conversation. I hope it was able to inspire you. And if you'd like to continue getting inspired, there's actually 3 main ways you guys can do that. 1, you guys actually watch all the YouTube videos. That's the full-length episodes and also clips, just to get a little preview about what each episode might be about. 2, you guys can actually listen on all podcasting platforms, which is Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or wherever you happen to listen to podcasts. Please feel free to leave a rating or review, just to help me out and also get the word of mouth out there. 3, you guys can actually subscribe to the Paul and Pals newsletter, which is basically a written summary of each episode in addition to my takeaway, so that I kind of give what the episode made me think about, what I got from it. Link in the description and show notes. But without further ado, always remember to stay creative.